Hello, I'm Regina McCann Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management, and welcome to our Women in Wealth series. Today, we're going to talk about caregiving and longevity. And there's a lot to be said in this topic. I know, like when I was a kid, I don't know about you, but the prevailing thought at that point when men went to work, women stayed home and raised the kids, and women did work at that in that generation. But the prevailing thought was that men needed to be paid more, because they were taking care of their family finances and they were in control of the family finances. So they were the bigger earners. Now, it has changed. I think there's a lot more dual income now versus when I grew up. Things have changed. Now, the majority of women now work outside the home, and some actually even out earn their spouses. That's not in every case because we do know that we tend to make less than men in general. But we also tend to be the primary caregivers, even though we're also working. Women are taking time out of their work years still to take time off to raise their kids or help the family with healthcare needs and whatnot. And on average, women step out of the workforce for 12 years to take care of their family, whether or not it's their children when they're young or when they have ailing adult family members that need a little bit of help. So that is a lot of time to step out of the work world. And these are, professional women having to step outside of their workforce to take care of their family. And that's not a decision on, what's the right or the wrong thing. The right or the wrong thing is the right thing for that person and their family. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the lost revenue during those potentially 12 years, the lost pay raises, the lost, titles, and the fact that there may not be as involved in the family finances because they're so knee deep in taking care of the family on the other side of things. So modern workforce, I'm hoping the younger generation, they're doing a little bit more evened out. But for the most part, we're still seeing women take time out and of their working careers to raise their family. And, they're missing out on those pay raises. They're missing out on the advancement opportunities, not to mention the years of missed income and the years of missed contributions to the retirement accounts. And I'm not talking, they can still contribute to, their IRAs, assuming their spouse works. But I'm talking about 401ks or 403bs, whatever the retirement plan is at work. There's a huge discrepancy in what you can put in a retirement plan at work versus an IRA. So, giving up the opportunity to do that has a huge impact on women. So the other thing is, not only are they saving less for retirement through their retirement plans because they don't have that income coming in for themselves, they're saving less for their rainy day and other goals. So it is an issue for women, especially since we tend to live about 5 years longer than our male counterparts. So what does that mean? We need more money. We need more money just for the fact that we're going to live 5 years longer. We need more money. So we need to find a way to balance out what we need to do at home, plus also saving money for our rainy day and saving money for our retirement plans. So that is something that contributes to the lack of retirement savings that a lot of women come across when they're thinking about retirement. They don't have as much saved because they hadn't been working outside the home and able to contribute to their retirement plans. So that is something that we have to figure out. So when you do go back to work, or if you're able to go back to work, that's when, it's even more important that you contribute a significant amount to your retirement plan. We want to make sure that, when you get to retirement, you have the ability to not worry about you're not going to have enough money as are you going to outlive your money? And obviously that could be an issue that, you don't want to be on that cardboard box like I talk about, or you don't want to be surfing sofas at the age of, I don't know, 80, 85. I don't know what age you would be running out of money, but it is a concern. Like, hey, I want to make sure I don't run out of money because I don't know where I'm going to stay if that happens or who's going to take care of me. So that's a thing that we try to focus on as well in our conversations. And that's why we think it's very important for women to have this conversation because they're not realizing that they're losing out on their financial future by not being able to put towards their retirement plans. And it makes retirement planning a little bit different for women because we're starting out with less and we're living longer. So we're trying to find ways to make up for that while you are able to work and while you are able to save, and all those things that go with it. Another issue that women face with the caregiving and longevity is when we step out of our professional roles for a significant time period. When we go back, obviously we've missed all those title promotions and pay raises. But the problem is when we come back after several years, we may not even be able to get a job back at the level we were. We may have to go back to an entry level job to get our foot back in the door and work all that. You have to work all over again to get to even where you were. So that becomes an issue, like what we call a reentry issue. It's steep and long-lasting consequences that we have to deal with. And some of the reasons women stay home are the fact that childcare is it's so expensive. And I've heard this so many times where a woman will say, "Well, I might as well just stay home because my paycheck is essentially just covering the daycare." But again, I when I talk to them, I'm like, "Well, if you want to work and versus you want to be home, those are two different conversations. But if you enjoy what you're doing and you feel like you want to work, even though you're just covering, quote unquote, only covering the childcare, you're still going to be at a workforce. You're still going to be contributing to your retirement plan, your 401k or 403b. If you work for the government, TSA, whatever the plan's called, you're still going to be able to do that. Plus, you're going to get pay raises along the road. Plus, maybe you're going to get a title promotion, things along those lines. These are really important things to consider when you're just saying, oh, well, it's only going to cover my daycare. That there's an impact, a larger impact if you step out just because you feel like it's not going to pay for anything. It actually does in the background do a lot of things. Again, if it's different if that's your choice, like, hey, I really want to be home and I can afford to be home, all the power to you. But sometimes I find people making that decision and it's not because they, really want to be at home. They feel like they can't afford to work because of the daycare. So that is something that as a country, women and men face that as a caregiving issue because of the cost of daycare. And I know we all feel like when by the time our kids get to grade school, that we get a huge pay raise by the time they get there because they don't have, if they're going to public school, you don't have to pay that, weekly, monthly amount that you're paying for daycare. The other thing that happened, and this is, I guess kind of a one-off, was that during the pandemic, there was a huge amount of women who left the workforce, and they called it a she session. Where because so many women left the workforce because they were, everybody's working at home and, both spouses were working at home, but then they have littles and the kids were like being homeschooled essentially. And instead of just putting them in front of a computer all day, a lot of parents decided one of them would stay home or, quit their job and, help teach the kids And that's where we wound up with a lot of women leaving, the professional world. And that's how we wound up with a she session. It's kind of a weird word to say, almost really hard to say fast. Um, so then we get to that point, but then, the other part of that is we also have aging parents, and a lot of us are the what we call the sandwich generation. And so what the sandwich generation is, hey, we've taken some time off for our kids, and now we're going to take off time to take care of our parents, which, hey, I'm going to be first one in line to take care of my mom when something happens to her. But again, it's, there's extra costs in there. It's the cost of losing your income, losing your retirement plan contributions. Are you going to lose your health care insurance because of that too? Or will your spouse be able to, handle that? But again, are you also going to miss out on pay raises and promotions and things like that? So, where we have to think about is how do we offset that caregiver work gap? We have to find a way to make it a little bit better for us, and how can we save, even if we do take that gap, right? Even if we do take that gap, how can we do it so it's not going to be as financially draining to us as it has been in the past? And one of the ways we could do that is not to be afraid to ask for help from family members. That's even the men in our lives. We can reach out to our sister, a brother, a husband, wife, sisters, whatever it is, reach out to other family members. You don't have to carry this all by yourself. Could the in-laws watch the kids 1 or 2 day a week? So maybe you could work part-time, just to keep your foot in the door. So that's something that may or may not work. It obviously depends on your profession, whether or not that would work well for you. Some people are like, oh, I'll work 3 10s or 4 10s, and that way that's one or 1.5 days less of actual being away from the house, can give them back at home with their kids and still being in the workforce. So, and even reducing the cost of childcare by a day or two can be a huge benefit to the purse. The other thing about that is we have caregiving of the elderly parents. We're thinking we have to do everything, and especially if it's our kids, you can't like really ask your neighbor, hey, can you watch my kids so I can go to work, because they have their own issues. But if the case is where you're taking care of an elderly parent, well, you do have siblings. And I know I have 4 brothers, and I think, wow, okay, that's all going to fall on me, because that's the typical traditional way it happens. But I have learned by watching other families struggle with this, and other women burning out because of, taking care of family members all by themselves. I will be raising my hand to my brothers and saying, hey, hey, you need to come over for a day. You need to take care of this part of it. Maybe you make sure all the medications are ordered and whatever we need. It does take a village. How we talk about raising our kids, it takes a village. It also takes a village when we have our adult family members who need our help. The other thing to keep about mind about that is, if we do have adult family members in our homes, or we're helping take care of them, there are community centers and senior centers where they even offer adult daycare. Now that could be used for you to go to work, or it could be used for you just to get a break. Because what also happens is, as we're taking care of everyone else, we tend to forget to take care of ourselves. And that's typical of any mom that I talk to. We're always the last to be like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to eat lunch today, or I didn't have time to do this, or I didn't have time to do that. So, if you're in the situation now where your kids are, up in school or grown and flown, and now you have the parent situation, look into some community centers, the senior centers, some adult daycares, just to give yourself a break, so you have minimally some time for yourself, or some time, a recovery day for you, so that you're not, I guess, kind of forgetting about yourself and worrying about your own health care. So there we go again. If we're setting aside taking care of our parents and leaving our work or decreasing our time at work, then there is that less money going into our retirement accounts again. So you can see how it's a vicious cycle that we live through. That we're needing to find ways, and I haven't found a perfect way around this yet, ladies and gentlemen, because there are men in this situation too. It is a work in progress. And as I say, because I try to work on not being the perfectionist, but I am a little bit on certain things. It's about progress, not perfection. And that's the only way we can manage this is worrying about like, hey, let's work towards progress. And it's not going to be perfect. So that's one of the things that we're working on with each other. We're looking at, some of the ways to keep our own financial health intact, and limiting the time that we step away from our work if it's the one thing that's going to help us financially down the road. The other thing is, volunteer work. Some of us do a lot of volunteer work. So even sometimes that has to give way because you're not able to, work everything else out. So, covering your bases, you want to make sure that you're not going to assume your working partner has you covered while you take off, for caregiving activities and duties. You want to make sure that you're having clear, concise conversations with your family and with your work family to know, like, hey, these are the boundaries. This is when I can work. And during these times, I'm going to be like completely on at work, or I'm going to be completely on at home during these other times so that I can give what I need to give where I need to give it. So that's harder said than done. But it is something that you can use to your advantage and work towards getting better about each and every time. So that you're not giving up all of your earnings. You can maybe do a little bit of both. You can work and take care of your family at the same time. Um, also decision making. It doesn't, and again, if you're the primary caregiving person, yeah, it feels like you should be the decision maker for everything because everything's in your lap, but that's also a lot of stress that we don't think about, or heaviness that's going to weigh us down. Maybe sharing some of those decision making items with your family members, it just maybe decrease your stress for what you're going through. The other thing I want to talk about is not underestimating your worth. Obviously, we've had to take time off for our families, and nobody is going to say that wasn't a good idea because we're all going to want to take care of our families. But we do need to know what we're worth. A lot of times, when we are offered jobs, we just accept the jobs and accept the salary or accept the hourly rate, whatever it is. We as women, for some reason, don't tend to negotiate those salaries. And we just kind of accept what's offered. Our male counterparts, however, have been conditioned to go in and say, well, no, well, you're offering me this, but I'm going to counter with this offer. And, then there's a compromise somewhere in between, or maybe they're given what they want, but at least it's a conversation. And that would be something great for us to start doing as well. Make that a challenge for us to say the next time we're going for a new job or something different, challenge each of us to say, okay, well, I know you're offering this, but I was more thinking that my time is worth this, and I would like to negotiate the starting salary. And that doesn't mean we're greedy or ungrateful or we're being difficult. It just means that we think our time is worth a little bit more than we normally think. We also could be suffering from imposter syndrome, where we think that we're not good enough or we're not as good as some of the other people at the office, and they should get the job over me, or all those things that go in our head and beat us down. We got to stop doing that to ourselves as well, so that we can work on increasing our thoughts on what we think our worth is. So I know a lot of incredible professional women who are making major, major gains in the workplace. And they're also still taking care of a million things in their lives, like their kids, their families, things like that. I see it all the time. But there's a lot of extra effort and time that goes into that. And they're also trying to balance everything, and there is no perfect work-life balance. It's kind of a myth. So we do talk about the fact that it is not perfect. We just work towards it. And I think women are amazing. We're able to do so many things. But we do have to admit that we need help sometimes, and that we are going to ask for more money when we get that job offer. Uh, it is imperative that we start thinking that way for us to work towards those higher salaries. So one of the other things I talk about is long-term care. Obviously, long-term care is very important once you're in retirement, and sometimes even before you get to retirement. I know a friend of mine who was in his like late 50s, and he was diagnosed with dementia. I mean, it was like a sobering thought that somebody that young would get dementia. And it was, awful. I mean, he had to eventually be put into a nursing home because his family took care of him for a couple of years until it wasn't safe for them to take care of him. So, whether or not, none of us want to talk about long-term care, because it's, you get that vision in your head of an old person's home and the smells and all that stuff of a hospital setting. And none of us want to admit that we're going to be there, right? None of us. But the probability is that some of us are going to be there, and or needing that type of care at home. And obviously we all want to stay home as long as possible, but we have to figure out, how are we going to pay for it? Our strategy is, how are we going to pay for it? Whether or not that's through self-funding or long-term care insurance. That's, one of the ways that you can pay it as well. Um, do you have enough money to self-pay? What is your strategy for if you don't have long-term care insurance? How are you going to pay? Do you have a bucket of money that's set aside for that, or at least earmarked for it? And who is going to take care of you? Who's going to literally come to your house every day and take care of you? And are they going to have to leave their job to do it? Have you talked to them about that? Are they willing to do that? Obviously, we all want to stay in our home and think that nothing's ever going to happen. But sadly, it does. And so sometimes people find out the hard way, and then it's too late to do anything about it. Um, and we want to take care of our family members, but sometimes it may not be in their best interest or the safety of our own family, and that's usually with a dementia situation. Or with my aunt's situation, she had to took care of her husband for years and years, my uncle, right? Years and years, and then finally he just kept falling and falling and falling, and she could not lift him. So at that point, he did also have to go to a nursing home or a care facility, and they had to use their savings to pay for that. So I'm not saying you have to have long-term care insurance, but you do need to have a long-term care strategy. Who is going to take care of you? How are you going to pay for it? Encourage your loved ones to have this conversation. Or if you're planning on your kids taking care of you, have that conversation with your kids. My brother's in that situation right now with his, we'll call the in-laws. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And they finally just did have to go to a nursing home, both the husband and the wife. And it's still a lot of work because he has to go over there so often, because, they feel he doesn't want them to feel like they're abandoned, but he physically can't take care of them anymore. So that's a real tough conversation with people as well. So let's talk about some long-term care myths. Okay, so there are a few misconceptions about long-term care. And one of the biggest ones is that Medicare is going to pay for it. No, they're not. Medicare does not pay for long-term care facilities or in-home assistance. I repeat, they do not pay for it. They will pay for some rehab type of stuff, and a certain time period, but they are not paying for you to be in a long-term care facility. They will not do it. Another thought is, or misconception is, well, then I'll just give my money away, to my kids or my, other family members, and then I'll just be eligible for Medicaid. Well, you know what? Guess what? The government's not stupid. They have this thing called the look back period to make sure that you're not giving your money away, and in order to qualify for long-term care support. They're actually kind of smart. They know all these games and they're not going to let you play them. A third myth is that long-term care insurance only pays for being in a facility, and not for care needs at home or the care or the home of a loved one. That's also not true. Most insurance plans, long-term care insurance plans, will pay for you to have care in your home. However, there are a few tricks to that. Like some of the policies I have seen with my clients and their families, where they have a great policy and it's a what's it called, a reimbursement policy, where they have to approve the types of things that you're spending the money on. And even though your family member might be have dementia and can't toilet themselves anymore, and you have to get Depends or adult diapers for them, I've seen where these long-term care insurance um, companies will deny the diapers, and the diapers are not cheap. So that is something you do have to know about going in to discussing long-term care insurance. What will it pay for? What won't? What are things that they're going to deny coverage for? What aren't they, going to cover? I know this is not a fun topic, but it's a necessity that you have it. No one wants to picture themselves in a nursing home or being home dependent on somebody 24/7. I get it. I don't want to either. We all think, I still think I'm like an 18-year-old girl sometimes in my head. And then my body tries to do some of those things. And I'm like, oh no, that's not, no, too old for that. Right. That's what we're dealing with here with the long-term care as well. So we're going to have things that happen along the way. Here's the other thing that people don't really think about. Men there's not a big percentage of men in these long-term care facilities, because a lot of times women are, their spouse is taking care of them. So, the wife takes care of the husband until he, passes away, or, if he has dementia, he has to go into a nursing home. And then, then there's nobody to take care of her when she has her health event, unless, they have kids who are willing to do that. So that is something that is an issue as well. So that's another thing that you want to think about. The other thing is that long-term care is not just about you, it's about your family. Are you going to have to ask your kids to take care of you, and are they going to have to leave their work, their jobs, to pay for, not pay for, but take care of you? They're not going to get paid because they're going to have to leave their jobs to take care of you, right? That's what we were saying all along. I was just kind of thinking about, as I was saying that, I was thinking about my brother, same brother, taking care of his in-laws, and he has had to miss so much work because he's had to take care of the in-laws. And, that's a big chunk of money. And his wife as well. I'm just saying it because it's my brother, but she has also had to miss a lot of work. So that income could be a big issue on the family resources as well. And it could be a drain. The other thing is, if, it could also drain the inheritance for the next generation, sometimes even putting them in debt if they don't think about the long-term care probabilities. So lots to think about there. Again, you want to just have these conversations. Details matter, as far as, what will it pay for, what won't it pay for if you go down the route of long-term care insurance. If you decide that, hey, I can't afford it, or, I don't need to have that, I can self-fund it, then the plan becomes, okay, well, then who's going to take care of me? Do I, how long, these are situations where I'm going to be at home. And even if you're like, oh, I don't want my kids taking care of me, that's fine. What are the resources that are going to come into your house? And then who's going to quarterback everything to make sure that nobody's stealing your stuff, right? Or nobody's stealing your checking account information and having somebody, empty that out as well. I've seen that happen with caregivers coming into the home. So there's a lot to think about here. Okay, guys and gals, this was, I know it's like a heavy topic, right? It's not a fun topic. I almost feel like I need to go out and take a walk to like regain my positive energy. But these are the tough conversations that if you have now, you're going to be a little bit more prepared for when they happen to you or your parents, right? It could happen to your parents and they're not even having these conversations. So maybe it's a time to approach your parents about this type of topic. Okay, and with that, I think that that is going to be our action item. Have these conversations. Have the conversation of what if something happens to me and not that I die, but what if I need somebody to take care of me? What if I can't take care of myself, or I need partial assistance or full assistance? Who's going to do it? How are they going to do it? How are we going to pay for it? And are they willing to? You have to ask you have to ask these conversations. You have to have the conversations with the people you think are going to take care of you or be the quarterback for your caretaking. So that's our action item. All right. Thank you for hanging in there with me. I know it was not one of the more fun topics. Bear with me. We have to have them every once in a while. Again, I'm Regina McCann Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management. And you can follow me at forgewealth.com. I am on Facebook and YouTube and Insta at Forge Wealth. LinkedIn. I don't know how I forget LinkedIn all the time. LinkedIn is one of my favorites. Regina McCann Hess. Go have a great day.